Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Duxley Gaming and the first part of the Blazing Salvo Wheel of Fortune build. If you missed the overview of the series, I recommend that you check the first video out. It's really short, I promise. But quickly, just to summarize, I've essentially got 24 hours once we get through the campaign to progress Blazing Salvo as far as I can using the Ascendancy of my choice. So before we get into the build, leveling, how it performed and stuff like that, I'll quickly go over the options that I think I had to make this build work. And I came up with 5. There's obviously self-cast, there'd be mines, totems, cast on crit, and then possibly spell slinger. I probably should have gone with mines with only 24 hours, but I decided to go self-cast, and I've picked Inquisitor. I picked Inquis just because it's got a really good mix of tankiness naturally through the Ascendancy with Consecrated Ground and overall really high regen. It's also got lots of bonuses to crit and attributes, so I just think it's something that doesn't really need any specific gear to get going. In terms of Ascendancy order, I picked up Righteous Providence first just to get Strength and Intelligence to make sure I don't have any attribute issues. It also gives a natural critical strike chance, and I'll explain why that's important in the leveling section. Then I've gone Consecrated Ground, which gives decent damage and regen. And then this just makes Consecrated Ground stay around for 4 seconds and gives it more effect. And then for Uberlab, I've gone and taken Inevitable Judgment, which is critical strikes, ignore resistances, which helps massively for like Arch Nemesis monsters and things like that. Also means I don't have to worry about Wave of Conviction, lowering resistances, cursing, things like that. And then in the off chance we don't have 100% crit, when you do crit, you get a little bonus of penetrating 10% resistances. So in terms of leveling, because I'm doing it in dribs and drabs, I'm not trying to speed level, I'm just doing it when I've got some downtime. I just leveled with the final tree that we'll go through later on. And I just ran a 4-link of faster casting, blazing salvo, intensity, and inspiration. And then I just supplemented it with our Holy Flame totem for a bit more damage. Once I got the Consecrated Ground from the third lab, I dropped the totem and went into a brand curse, wave of conviction type setup to get resistances down. It felt okay. It wasn't particularly quick due to the nature of the skill. And if I was leveling to speed, I'd probably have done brands and cremation, but I've never played with this skill before, so I wanted to get an idea of how it works and how it feels. Then once I got through the campaign, that's when the timer starts, and I had a decision to make as how I wanted to go about progressing. My goal initially was just to get to maps and just get as much completion as possible on my 4-link. Looking back now I've done it, I think I should have probably done some heist before Kitava to try and get at least a 5-link, as 4-link damage hit a wall really, really quickly. And you have to make sure you're kind of debuffing enemies to get more damage. And after 2.5 hours of pretty frustrating mapping, I decided it was time to hit up Heist and to get a 5-link. And I did get super lucky and dropped an Energy Shield Armor 6-link, which allowed me to start transitioning into crit, which is quite nice because around sort of level 75, there's not many more nodes to take other than just more life. So that was when I wanted to start taking crit nodes anyway. So at that point, I dropped Ellie Overload and just started going into crit. And from there, it's really just a case of trying to get completion up, try and get some better gear. But again, with the gear I had, I was really unlucky with the league mechanics that I found in maps, which I'll go into later. And even on a 6-link with 75% crit chance, it still felt really bad. Ellie ailments felt especially bad when you got chilled. It just made the build feel even clunkier than it already felt. So in terms of the build itself, in terms of pros, there's honestly not that many. I'm really not enjoying it that much. It has got really good life sustain, and you don't have to do much to get your crit up really high, but that's really just from Inquis Ascendancy and nothing to do with the build or the skill. There are quite a lot of cons, but I think each one can be tackled as you progress. But early on, it does feel like a bit of a slog. So the first thing I noticed is I feel that the build needs at least 90 on the skill tree to make it feel viable. There's just loads of things you want to get to make the build feel comfortable. So you need really high cast speed because you want to run Spell Echo. You want to run Intensity because it gives good damage and AoE when you're mapping. But for bossing, because it reduces AoE with each stack, if you don't have AoE on the tree, your boss damage is really bad because half of your Blazing Salvos will miss, and you've got no AoE sort of expansion or overlap, and you do lose pretty much all your AoE. The build feels really slow, even with non-slot flask, 30% movement speed. It just doesn't feel particularly quick. I could look at trying to work shield charge into the build, but I'm running out of gem slots. And then obviously, like I said, when you get chilled, it makes it feel even worse. And I haven't picked up the chill craft on boots yet, so there's not much I can do to mitigate chill. I don't really want to use a flask slot because you have to be chilled to then be immune to it, and it's just a bit micromanaging that I can't really be bothered to do. So I do feel the build to feel smooth needs ailment immunity or at least chill immunity, which on SSF in 24 hours can be hard to get, and I'm not sure it's something I should be spending time targeting. Spells also chunk the build pretty bad, even with decent block. It is with glancing blows granted, but I've got 60% of both block around there, and it just feels like you get chunked, so I'll need to try and look at getting some sort of life on block shield. And even on a 6-link, decent crit chance, okay crit multi, it does seem super low in terms of damage, but my gear is bad, and I know this sort of build basically ramps up the more gem levels you can get. You just get massive increases in DPS. Now, Uberlab is a massive breakpoint for the build because once you get Uberlab, you don't have to worry about lowering elemental resistances, and it takes away a bit of the clunkiness of trying to get like debuffs on the enemy. And I did get Uberlab done. If I hadn't got lucky and got my 6-link, on a 5-link, I think it would have felt pretty uncomfortable. It was also a very, very easy Uberlab day. I think it was like 6 rooms or something. It's one of the shortest I've ever seen. So at least I knew if I did die, it wouldn't be that long to try and have another attempt at it, but I did do it on the first try. I've done 5 hours plus, and I feel like I haven't really progressed because I felt a lot of the time was just tinkering with the build. Hence why when we go through my progress in a bit, it does seem a little bit slow. So like I said, 5 hours in, I was hoping to be much further on, but it isn't the easiest skill to map with early on. Not being immune to chill slows you down. Before I got Uberlab, any sort of arch nemesis monster with Ellie resistances or spell block just took an age to get down. And the wrong combinations, even though we are quite tanky standing still, can mean death. But now Uberlab's done, I think I should be able to speed up a bit more now. I don't really have to worry about elemental resistances. So we'll quickly look at the Atlas tree that I'm taking. Now, I mentioned I've been unlucky with the content. This is the tree I've got so far. So we're taking these harvest nodes here and these here. Also, we're taking Stream of Consciousness. I've probably done 50 plus maps and I've had 1 harvest chirp in my maps, which is insane. So I'm hoping I start to see a lot more because I really need to get some better gear. My gear, which we'll go through soon, is trash. So the next nodes from here would be probably these just to get some more map sustain. And then I'm going to go up and get this essence node here so I can actually start getting some decent essences. This one here. And then we're going to start rushing the lower tier maps to get some essences to craft some gear because I'm in dire need of some upgrades. But the idea really is, yeah, harvest and essences just to get gear. If I get decent gear and I've still got like 12 hours left, then we'll look at what else we might want to do to try and push content and score some more points. As I said, from here, once my gems get leveled, I need to try and get gear with +1 to fire skill gems, which is why I want to farm loads of essences, and we're basically going to spam to try and get a decent wand, decent shield, decent amulet. If we could just get +3 to levels from somewhere, then that's going to increase the DPS massively. Like once you get to 20, every level makes an absolutely massive difference for this type of spell skill. Need to try and get a bit more AoE in the build to make intensity feel a bit better on bosses. And I need to maybe get some max res into the build, maybe drop Herald of Astra, Herald of Purity, and run RF to get some more damage, but I do need to test whether that's going to make my regen good enough to survive. I did try it without the max res, definitely not good enough, so we're going to need to tweak the build a little bit if we want to try and fit that in. But overall, as I say, I'm not loving the skill as self-cast, and I kind of wish I would have gone Totems or Mines, but we're SSF. I've picked my tree, my Ascendancy, I have no regrets left, so I'm stuck with it. We've only got 24 hours, so I'm not going to waste time trying to respec into a build that at the moment, because I never played it, I don't know if it's any better. So we'll go through the gear that I've got at the moment. As I say, it is bad, but I don't have any essences, I don't have any harvest crafts, so I'm stuck with what I've got at the moment. So we have a wand, which has decent cast speed, crafted spell damage, and then really bad fire damage to spells. The fire damage to spells, the more you level your gems up, the less it makes a difference because you're going to get huge flat numbers from the actual gem anyway. So here I would think you'd want something like +1 to skill gems, cast speed, crit chance, and then spell damage or fire damage. And I think that would be a really, really good combination. The helmet is just fairly decent armor, life, resistances. The shield has got some decent crit chance of spells and some life, a little bit of regen. So it's not the worst shield. I'm happy with this at the moment. The amulet just gives me a lot of resistances and a little bit of dexterity. Ideally, I would like this to be more dexterity and like, you know, +1 to fire skill gems, but these are things that we can work on a bit later. The rings are purely just life and resistances, nothing else. And for now, they're okay, but obviously they're going to need tweaking because cast speed feels like it's a little low, so I'd like to get some cast speed into the build. So these rings would be a prime position to get that in. The 6 ink I haven't really crafted because I don't have any essences. The gloves, again, not very good. Strength and dex, and I do need the dex. Resistance is crafted life. The belt, absolute junk. Again, life, bit of armor, not a lot going for it. The boots I've had for absolutely ages. They're the only pair of boots I've found with 30% movement speed, and that is really important at the minute because I feel that any slower and I feel like I'm going to die in maps. Again, need to get some better gear, which is why I'm going to prioritize essences in the next few hours and possibly even try and go into Delve. In terms of flasks, and then a granite flask with increased cast speed. We have a silver flask with increased armor. And then we've got a crit flask with increased movement speed. And then we have a quicksilver flask, which has got attack speed, which doesn't do anything. So I might need to re-roll that. And then just a bleeding life flask. In terms of gems, I am running quite a few auras. So I'm running Determination, Temper Shield for spell block, and also immune to shock. Herald of Ash because I can't fit in a 50% aura, and Herald of Ash is actually not too bad for clear and single target. Vitality to get some extra regen. Defiance Banner just to increase my armor. And then I'm also running a Stone Golem when I remember to recast it to get even more life regeneration. So if we look at the regen at the moment, it's 860. With flasks up, we've got armor of just short of 19k. So it's not too bad. I just feel like this block needs to come up since it's glancing blows. And these definitely need to get increased as well. Feel if I could get up to like 78%, get this up to around 70, it's going to feel much better. Then get some life on block on a shield. And I feel like I'm going to be more comfortable face tanking stuff, which in all honesty, I'm going to need to do on this build because I'm never going to get the DPS really above 800k probably in this playthrough unless I get lucky with my gear. Not really much to go over on gem links other than that. We're running a mark on hit with Assassin's Mark just to make sure I'm getting as big a crit chance as I can on bosses. What else are we running? We're running a Molten Shell with a cast and damage taken. And I think that's it. There's not much else on here other than a Flame Dash with Arcane Surge and then a Frost Shield, which I've only just added in, really just to give a bit more defenses on bosses. So as I say, we are 5 hours, 16 minutes in at the moment. I'm happy where I am, but only because I fluked that 6 link. If I didn't, I'd still be struggling in lower tier maps because it is a real struggle on 4 links to do any sort of damage whatsoever and get through maps quickly. So I'm hoping I can now ramp up and get things going. My Twitter and my Twitch handles are in the video description and they're on the screen. I am going to try and stream as much as I can live. I'll probably do 50-50, like a couple of hours on stream, couple off, just because I'm not great at multitasking. So when I'm streaming, I'm probably not clearing content particularly quickly because I like, you know, have a chat, have some fun. So it's kind of works better for me to do 50-50. I will send a tweet out every time I'm going live. I'm normally live for 2 to 3 hours at a time. I'm going to try and get on at least 3 times a week with this series just to motivate myself to do it so that then I can maybe get through a few more before the league is up. There's not really much else to go through. In terms of bandits, I helped Illyra for the mana regen, the resistances, and the crit multi, but I'm life tapping my skills up, so I don't know whether I need to respec that, but I don't have the regrets at the moment anyway. But I'm comfortable on resistances, so all Illyra has given me is a little bit of crit multi, so I probably need to respec that. So the only thing I'll just run through is the 6 link that I've settled on at the moment, and it is Blazing Salvo. We've got that linked to Intensify. We've also got a node on the tree, which we'll go through in a minute, which adds an extra stack. Got Spell Echo, which at the moment doesn't feel great. I just feel I need 20 to 30% more cast speed to make that feel a bit more comfortable. I do feel like I'm locked in place a little bit sometimes, especially when you get chilled. It feels really bad. Running Live Tap because I can't be bothered with messing around with taking loads and loads of nodes to try and sustain the mana. So we've taken a few decreased life cost of skill nodes and masteries. So the cost is 152, and as you can see, when I'm using it, I'm regenning straight away because I'm using Spell Echo, so it only uses 1 lot. So I'm probably only getting 2 to 3 casts a second, and I've got nearly 1,000 regen, so it feels pretty comfortable. And then we've just got the 2 crit gems here, which I might be able to replace crit strikes at some point when I get more gear, but at the moment, they're needed to make sure I'm making the most of the Uberlab Ascendancy. So I will run through the tree. The POB will be in the description. As I say, it's nothing special, and I've never played this build before. The builds on POE Ninja for SSF I didn't feel were great, and the ones in trade were sort of out of my reach because of uniques. So I've kind of had to learn what I can from them and go with it. So I won't go through the whole tree. We're essentially going crit, life, AoE, and then resistances and fire damage where we can, and then life and regen. So just a few important things to point out. Iron Will is really, really important because we get damage from strength. And as an Inquisitor, we naturally get bonus strength from our Ascendancy. And at the moment, I'm sitting on 357. It combos really well with this because basically the lowest of your strength or intelligence gives you 1% crit per point. So I'm getting 351% crit from the fact my intelligence is 351. Determination reservation is needed along with vitality reservation. I could probably drop them because I don't have a lot that uses mana, but I just want to make sure I feel nice and comfortable. This mastery here to get 1 stack of intensity. And then there's not really anything else that important. It's just going around getting life and resistances and damage. It may not be the most optimal tree, but it's working for me. And I'm just going to come and get these 2 nodes next. These are not very optimal, these nodes, same as these nodes here. But with intensity, it just feels really bad with no extra AoE. So I think I'm going to need these until I can maybe figure out an alternative. Last thing I wanted to go through is how ridiculously lucky I've been in this SSF playthrough with stuff that I can't really use for the build in a 24-hour playthrough. So I had a Raw Divine drop on about the 5th map, had a Raw Exalt drop. I've had a Intuitive Leap drop somewhere. Is it over here? No. I've had an Intuitive Leap drop, which is pretty expensive early on. I've had a Venter's Gamble that's plus resistances by quite a bit, plus rarity and plus quant. So again, that's probably worth some money at league start. And I've also had an Enlightened drop, which is here. Again, I'm not going to get to the point where I'm really going to be able to use that in 24 hours. I doubt I'll get it leveled up enough. And I kind of don't necessarily want to use it in a build because it's very, very unlikely you're going to find one of those. But it's just to show that on an SSF playthrough, you always end up with this sort of like, these are the sort of drops you would kill for in trade because this would basically allow me to build this character however I want at league start. Or even just go, right, I've got this stuff, I'm going to respec to a different character now. I've got currency, I'm just going to go straight into a bow build. I'm going to do a cast on crit or whatever. It gives me more options. So I'm happy that I had these drops. It's nice to get a bit of good luck, but not really when I'm not going to be able to make the most of them. Although the Intuitive Leap could fit in here quite nicely because we're running Herald of Ash. We can take both these Herald nodes. Damage recouped this life is really nice. And then we can also pick up these 2 nodes as well. So I could actually use that in the build once I level a bit higher. So if we take these 2 nodes next, go up to get this dual socket and then take the nodes I mentioned, it's probably a good use of it. But I need to look at whether there's better things to do with the points. But I think that's it for the video. The POB is in the video description. I've also put a rough POB of what I want to get to. The gear is probably slightly optimistic, but it's more to show you what you can get if you're in a trade environment for not a huge amount of money. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.